Hey, everybody. Reporting live out front of the courthouse, the federal courthouse in Greenbelt, Maryland. Thanks to all of you that support All Rise News, is Adam Klasfeld, who just sat through what I think is the final hearing on removal for Abrego Garcia. We thought there might be more, but no, I think Judge Sines is finished, and she kind of made that sort of clear today during this hearing. And Adam, I was watching some of your posts come out on Blue Sky and this latest piece that you wrote for All Rise News here on Substack. This was a pretty incredible hearing as far as what the government admitted to doing and not doing, and kind of how the questioning went of one of the representatives of the government in this case, and a lot of snapbacks to the government in some of the things that they had to say or not say. Because as we know, for many, many hearings now, all Judge Zini's wanted was somebody with knowledge, and the government can't seem to get it together to provide that. So talk about some of the things that you heard in the Abrego hearing today and why we may be on the precipice of his release.
Well, the first reason for that, Allison, is that the evidentiary record is now closed in this case. This is the fourth such evidentiary hearing that we've had in Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case, where all that U.S. District Judge Zinis had wanted was an official with knowledge to answer questions about the government's plans to remove Abrego. They're on their fourth try in trying to send him to a faraway African nation. The first choice was supposed to be Uganda. Then it was Eswatini, which is the last absolute monarchy on the African continent. Then it was Ghana. Now the current choice is Liberia. And unlike those three other countries, Liberia has actually promised to accept Abrego. But none of these countries are a place where Abrego has any ties, a place where he has he speaks the language, has family. He has asked for permission to be sent to Costa Rica, a place where, yes, he does speak the language, where he is not at risk of torture. It was a country that the government had offered to send him when they tried to pressure him into a plea deal in his criminal case. So during today's hearing, Judge Zinis really asked the government, why is Costa Rica now off the table? It was a country that they offered. They said that the door is closed, and she was very skeptical of that. She said, there is no evidence in the record before me. She keeps giving them opportunities to explain their positions, and they are not giving her any evidence. So this is the end of the evidentiary record, and she will issue a ruling one way or another. Of course, Abrego's lawyers are arguing that he should now be released, and it's been a long journey. All of these hearings stretch multiple hours. This one was more than 4 hours. All of them brutal for the government. But you see that Judge Zinis takes a very careful, orderly process through this. And she realizes that any ruling that she gives is going to be pushed up on appeal. She's crossing every T, dotting every I, and she used an expression that I never heard before until this hearing. She said, we'll eat the elephant one bite at a time. And that has really described this months-long process that began after the government, of course, whisked Kilmar Abrego Garcia out of the country off the streets of Maryland in March. She's been the judge assigned to 2 habeas cases. The first, 5 orders later from multiple courts, got him back to the United States, where the government, of course, charged him with smuggling offenses that they are now trying to run away from through his deportation.
Yeah, and today's hearing focused on a few things, but one of the key things that Judge Sines was trying to get at in her questioning of the government and the government officials was whether or not there's even an order for removal. So in a separate case in immigration court, and remember, the immigration judges aren't part of the judiciary, they're part of the executive branch, but the immigration court had determined that there was the no fear wasn't credible and et cetera, but never actually issued an order of removal. And that's one of the things that has to be in place in order to remove someone and to detain someone pending removal. And because of a previous case, you're not allowed to detain them for too long because that's just punitive. So then that's an old Supreme Court precedent. But
Right.
what I think is interesting is at one point, the government actually said that when asked if there was an order for removal, the government said, well, he agreed to go to Costa Rica, which is the same as having an order of removal. And the judge didn't take too kindly to that prescribed idea.
Right. She shot back immediately. Her reaction. She didn't let the grass grow before responding to that. She said, "Not necessarily. That may just be a concession to the fact that he has spent months at CCOT, referring to the El Salvador terrorism prison where he was tortured. That he's playing the cards that he was dealt. And right now, I try to emphasize it because there's confusion on this point. This is not even necessarily a case of the Trump administration is fighting for his deportation and he is fighting to stay. He is playing the hands that he is dealt. He is saying, send me to a country where I can speak the language and will respect my human rights. That country is Costa Rica. His lawyers have said in open court before today and during the last hearing, when asked point blank, would he agree to deportation to Costa Rica right now? They answered definitively yes multiple times. So the question is, and it's a question that she keeps asking the government and the government keeps dancing around, is why send him to faraway African nations where he doesn't speak the language, where he has no family ties, other than the reason that the petitioner says, meaning to punish him for asserting his rights, to make him the canary in the coal mine, to make the example out of him that this is what happens when you stand up for your rights. This is what happens when you fight the government's plans for you, even if they violate your constitutional rights, even if they are punitive. Fight and you will be sent halfway across the globe to a human rights abusing country where you have no ties.
Yeah, and
No es justo, someone said, and that is correct.
yeah, and
It's
and
not
I
just.
I think it's interesting, given no removal order, that the one witness that the government did bring in, acting assistant director for ICE's removal division, a man named John Edward Cantu, was asked on the stand about a declaration he wrote in this case. And what you had posted on Blue Sky about his answer to that question honestly took me aback. I'm very rarely surprised by this administration, but this one took me aback. Talk a little bit about Mr. Cantu and what he testified to.
So I had mentioned earlier, Judge Paula Zinis keeps demanding an official with knowledge. She's giving the government every opportunity. This is now their fourth. Every opportunity to answer the questions about their plans, the basis for lawfully deporting Abrego where they want to send him. And here, it was in a Cantu declaration. That's the name of the official, Mr. Cantu, and he admitted on the witness stand that his declaration contained a paragraph that was essentially ghostwritten by a State Department lawyer, and he didn't know what it meant. So the very basis for their plans to send him to Liberia, as a matter of fact, the judge said of Mr. Cantu, this witness knows nothing. And she has said that before. As a matter of fact, there is a pending motion for sanctions filed by Abrego's lawyers that is perhaps the Chekhov's gun in all of this. So whatever happens with Judge Zinis's order, if she orders Kilmar Abrego Garcia released from prison, there is this hanging thread. Will she sanction the government for repeatedly when she says, give me someone competent and knowledgeable to answer these very specific questions that I have asked for information that will help assist my ruling. She, at one point, even said, you are reasonably competent and well educated lawyers. If I, it seems to me that if the evidence that you say actually existed, I would know about it. So that has been Judge Zini's frustration. Whatever the actual substance of her order, whether she releases Kilmar Abrego Garcia, whether she upholds the injunction blocking his deportation, there is still that pending matter. Will she sanction the government for their repeated inability to follow that order? That is to say, to provide her an official with knowledge. Now, like I said a little earlier, we're on the fourth time. The last time I was here in Greenbelt, Maryland for one of these hearings, she said of the government's failure to provide an official with knowledge, 3 strikes, you're out. We're now on number 4 and the ball game continues.
Yeah, and the original case when he was on the plane bound to El Salvador, where Judge Boasberg ordered the planes turned around, has now been kicked back down to Boasberg, so he can continue contempt proceedings, criminal contempt proceedings against the government. And we may see whether or not the Supreme Court is keen on having a prosecutor appointed by a court. I don't think they will be, based on some recent cases. But that's a discussion for another day.
Mhm.
But back to Mr. Cantu, can you tell me a little bit, because I kind of got lost in the language a little, about the discussion and the back and forth about him being promoted from a field office to become the assistant director of removal, and that there were other agents that also received those promotions, and how that might tie into this declaration he agreed to sign his name to that he didn't write most of?
There were many details that jumped out at me in the more than 4-hour hearing. That one I don't actually have offhand. I will say this: it seemed very much from Mr. Cantu's declaration that this was a very heavily lawyered endeavor. Spoke of one, and he spoke of being on the phone with multiple lawyers for multiple divisions of DHS. One was, and there's a Department of State lawyer wrote that offending paragraph, and so there has been a trend, to your question, Allison, about throughout Trump 2.0, where officials who do what they're ordered rise up in the chain. And I've spent much of yesterday in Alexandria, Virginia, nearby to here, to cover the case of James Comey. And of course, we see common themes there. We had Lindsay Halligan and the revelation about the grand jury, and the fact that the grand jury, the full grand jury, did not see the document that ultimately became the final indictment because most of them were home. And the pattern continues. People elevated and not particularly knowledgeable about the thing that they are supposed to do. The other pattern of a very significant paperwork error: if you are submitting a declaration to a court and attesting to your knowledge of a thing, and you don't understand the words that your lawyer had instructed you to put in that document, that creates a problem. And it created a problem for Judge Zinis today.
And before we let you go, because I know that you are extremely busy traveling and covering all these cases, which reminds me to remind everyone to please subscribe to All Rise News. And if you are able and have the means to financially support what Adam is doing, he doesn't have any corporate oligarchs giving him a bunch of money to travel and stay in hotels. So that's up to us. So we appreciate your support there. But my final question is whether Judge Sini's indicated when she might rule on this long journey of multiple hearings. I feel like we may get a long ruling, and that it might take a little bit of time. But in the meantime, he could be being held and detained against the law, against the Constitution, against Supreme Court precedent that disallows him to be detained for punitive reasons. Did you get a sense from Judge Sini's when she may rule on this particular matter?
I did not, and I think your sense is right. This might take some time, and I go back to the expression that Judge Zini cited: you eat the elephant one bite at a time." It's taken her a long time, and I think she recognizes that there is also running parallel to this a criminal trial that is right around the corner. It's going to be in late January in the Middle District of Tennessee in Nashville. And so she realizes that this is going to be heavily litigated. Even if she issues an order quickly, it's going to be appealed. There could be stays of her order. So she is biding her time and has been creating a record showing beyond any doubt that she has given the government every opportunity to explain itself, even when it changes its plans, even if it chooses a fourth country on the map. She will allow them the opportunity to provide a rationale for that decision. And so now she has a very full, very clean record to go up to an appellate court. But I will say this: her questions and her statements throughout the hearing leave very little doubt as to where the wind is blowing. And on a related note, since I have this building behind me, I'll say this: there's another very significant hearing in this very courthouse tomorrow morning. And that is the case of John Bolton. He has his initial pretrial conference. We might find out what the road to that trial will be, perhaps even a trial date. And I will be back here reporting live on that as well.
Good old half man, half mustache, John Bolton, who actually may be in some trouble, based on the indictment that I read. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not the Department of Justice and the Trump administration relents on deporting him to Costa Rica to avoid being embarrassed at trial in January, and whether Judge Sines blocks his deportation pending the appeals on all of these different situations. So thank you so very much, and we look forward to Judge Sines's ruling, and we look forward to your coverage of it when it comes out. And I think everybody, if you subscribe, if you're already subscribed, and if you're not, subscribe to All Rise News, and you can find out what happens to one John Bolton tomorrow in Greenbelt, Maryland. It's been good to talk to you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Allison. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.